It wasn't just crooked contractors who were stealing money. Even a coalition provisional authority official was at it too. Last month, Robert Stein Jr., employed as an official by the CPA despite a previous conviction for fraud, pleaded guilty to conspiring to steal more than $2 million and taking kickbacks in the form of cars, jewelry, cash and sexual favors. So, rather than security, bribery, corruption, fraud, mismanagement and incompetence are the real reasons for the disappearance of billions of dollars down the Iraq money pit. In the end, only $3.5 billion was handed over by the coalition to Iraq. Yet, last November, Britain's Foreign Secretary Jack Straw told Parliament the government wasn't aware that any monies from the Development Fund for Iraq were unaccounted for. US Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld declined to talk to us about the Iraqi money. But eventually, in the American Embassy and the heavily fortified Green Zone in Baghdad, we did find a man prepared to speak to Ali.
I went to meet the new man in charge of America's reconstruction efforts in Iraq. I wanted to ask Ambassador Dan Speckhard what happened to our money, but he was not willing to discuss it.
Most of the concerns about misspent money have to do with what happened 2 years ago or before. When you actually look for evidence of current problems, there's only tiny little fractions, magnitudes you're talking about are very, very different. It's useful to sort of evaluate what happened so we can avoid those problems in the future, but it's a little bit water under the bridge at this point in terms of what we need to be focusing on for Iraq.
So Iraq's $20 billion, much of it lost, wasted or unaccounted for, is now officially water under the bridge. But some former coalition officials have a very different message for Iraqis today.
I would say I'm sorry we didn't do a better job. I'm sorry we didn't take more of the Iraqi money that we were trustees of and made sure it got into Iraqis. I'm sorry we didn't do many small projects, perhaps less visible, but much more effective in the long run, that would have really restored Iraq.
What can be done now to rectify the mistakes that were made?
What can be done now? The Iraqis are going to determine that. I think what we can do is very limited. Our opportunity has gone. We blew it.
Now it's too late. Iraq's own money is spent, and America says that once the additional $21 billion it pledged has gone, there'll be no more. It's a far cry from the promises that were made at the beginning.
We will help them to restore basic services, such as electricity and water, and to build new schools, roads, and medical clinics.
Yes, expectations probably were too high by some of the Iraqis that when the world's strongest economic power comes to its aid, it can fix everything. But in reality, a country is a very complex situation. The challenges are enormous for when you have 26 million people. We have done what we can to help support, jumpstart the process of helping Iraq get back on its feet and return to sort of a modern economic system.
Back in the hospital at Diwania, I wanted to check on the condition of Zahra and Abbas, the twins born 1.5 months premature. Their mother was still unwell after the birth and being cared for in another ward. She had not been told how weak her children were. When I found Zahra, the doctor was having a difficult time trying to treat the child without proper drugs or ventilation equipment. With no suitable mask to resuscitate her, he could only hold the tube to her nostril.
Outside of medicine.
If the reports that we're seeing coming out of Iraq now are even half true, the situation there should not exist. This was never a developing country with a third world kind of approach. This was a country that at one time had been the star of the Middle East in terms of health care. It was a country that other Middle Eastern countries referred to as a model of health care. And yet they are functioning at a bare subsistence or below subsistence level.
They haven't got basic equipment, they haven't got masks, they haven't got drugs. They should have had those within 6 months, not still be looking for them 3 years later.
You know, it's a type of distribution that is sporadic. It's a type of distribution that some people hoard equipment and supplies. It's a type of distribution system that isn't efficient. In time it will get better, but it's not going to happen overnight. But hospitals are functioning. That's what's important here. Do they have every supply that you might have in UK? No. Are people doing the best they can with what they have? Yes.
The problem is, the doctors caring for Zahra have virtually nothing to make the best of. They have no ventilators, no adrenaline, not even a cheap but essential medicine like vitamin K. Even the cannula being used on Zahra had to be bought on the black market by her father, and now he has gone into town again, this time looking for vitamin K. Only the grandmother is here. Then Zahra starts to deteriorate. She's gasping for breath. Her father has still not returned. But it is too late.
وين هذا أمه؟ يما هذا انتهى الطفل.
And then the father comes back.
هسه أنا راح أجيب هاي الإبر. لأني اي والله قالوا لي روح جيب فيتامين كي ماكو. فيتامين كي روح جيب.
If this hospital had had the correct equipment and the right drugs, Zahra should have survived.
شوفوا ولد. وين غالب له؟ من هذا؟ لا لا صغيرة.
منين جبت؟
هناك بالصيدلية بالصيدلية. خليها.
The next day, Abbas, Zahra's brother, died too. This is not the new Iraq we were promised when the coalition invaded our country.